Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Imagine a food delivery that ends in a mixed martial arts fight for a stupid reason. Guy attempted to assault me because I didn't deliver to him first. This happened literally 2 days ago. So I work for one of many self-employable delivery apps that deliver food for various restaurants. On this particular day, I'd gotten assigned to orders that were relatively close to each other, so I picked up the first order and get the second one too. The first order, of course, gets dropped off first. It took me about 10 minutes to get from the first address and drop off the order, except I couldn't drop it off immediately since I had to hand it to the customer. This took an additional 5 minutes since it took them forever to answer the door. Once that had been completed, I was on the way to the next address. So I get to the next house to drop off this order, and this one also requests that I hand it directly to the customer. So I go to knock on the door, and the following encounter ensues. A lady answers the door, about 5'8". She was a bit taller than me, blonde, kinda youngish looking. She has this look on her face like I was someone who just kicked a puppy or something. She crosses her arms and says, "Lady, took you long enough. We saw you go all over the place except her to drop our food off. Care to explain?" I was kind of shocked, but using my best customer service voice replied, Sorry, ma'am, I'd been assigned 2 orders and I was instructed to go to the first order first since it was closer, I assume. If there's an issue, you can contact insert delivery app's name, support, and they can try to work with you." She was not happy by this. She then tells me that she wants her order remade and wants it for free, or she'll call the restaurant and have me fired. She'd been very rude to this point, and I really don't want to help her farther. Ma'am, I don't work for the restaurant. I'm an independent contractor. I'm so sorry, but there's nothing I can do. After that last statement, she became irate. She started to clap her hands and she told me, "Okay, you wait right here. I got something for you." I decided it's time to leave. Before I could completely get off the front porch, her husband came out. She was wearing a wedding ring, so I only assumed at the time. This would be confirmed later. He's at least 6 feet even and started to scream at me to hold it right there. Now, for further context, I've trained in multiple martial arts and self-defense for years. I heard this man come out and yell. I immediately turned to face him because you never want someone who's potentially aggressive to have your back. I'm still backing up, but now I've turned to face him only feet away. He started advancing towards me. "You're gonna get us our effing refund or else," he screamed. I replied with the same statement I told the lady, but in a softer tone to attempt to de-escalate this man. As I'm in mid-sentence, he pushed me back hard. As soon as he had pushed me, my instinct and training kicked in. As I regained my footing, I didn't get knocked down, I squared my stance and put my hands up to my face in case he tried to swing on me. I started to yell back at the guy and ordered him not to get any closer or put his hands on me. This was my warning. He then threw a wild punch that I slipped back with a lean and then countered with a front kick to his stomach. This landed flush, I confirm by the most notable oof sound I've heard many times before. He folded slightly, exposing his face, so I followed up with a 1-2 as trained. After eating a 1-2, he fell to one knee. I moved back slightly to disengage and told him to stay down so I can leave. Once again, you never turn your back on an aggressor. He got up, red in the face. He screamed at me, "F you, I'll kill you," and attempted to charge me. He threw another wild punch and another. I ate one but slipped and ducked under the second to get around to take his back. From here, I attempted to wrestle him down. He kept trying to punch me and even elbowed me once in the face before I was able to trip him and take him down. I did my best to pin him, no hooks in case he picked me up and slammed me, but wasn't successful until he rolled towards me and I mounted him. He's mad. "I will effing kill you! Get the F off me!" He tried to bench press me off him and almost got up a couple of times. He was strong. I told him I'm not getting off until he calms down. Now he started to punch, scratch, and bite me. In response, I give a good couple hammer fists to get him to cover up, and once he did, I got higher on his chest to pin his arms to his head. We remained there until the cops came. Once they arrived, they ordered me off him and put me in cuffs. I was put in a squad car until a cop came to get my statement and asked me what happened. I explained how they wanted a refund and I couldn't give it to them since I'm just a delivery driver. The cop told me the wife called and said I threatened her and was assaulting her husband on their front lawn. He asked me if I had any way to prove my side. Luckily for me, I have a dash cam in my car. I left the windows down. The cam caught some of the action from the front door on video, and the rest caught on audio of him demanding a refund, threatening me telling him to back off, some audio of the struggle, him telling me he was going to kill me, and even me telling him to calm down. Apparently, a neighbor across the street had a Ring camera, and it also captured the incident with video and some audio. The cops then let me go. They got my info and told me that my story seemed straight. I pressed charges on him and was told by the cops they would call me if they had more questions. Edit. I did report them to the app, included a copy of the police case number from my record in my county. Should be sufficient to get them banned. Edit 2. About my injuries, nothing crazy. A bruise on my cheek, a bit of a busted lip, and he bit my finger pretty good. But outside from that, I'm pretty okay. Nothing I haven't had before. And our second story. HOA going nuts. My HOA is getting more aggressive. In my neighborhood, you can't park on the street, and residents also aren't allowed to use guest parking unless they have some sort of permit. This wouldn't be so bad if not for the fact that 80% of the houses here don't even have a driveway. What they do have is a tiny strip that you're supposed to parallel park your car on, or you have to park in the garage. Sounds annoying, right? Well, it's worse. I live on an island, so space is very limited, and houses cost practically more than an arm and a leg here. Most people, including myself, use their garage as a bigger space for the house. I'm fortunate to have a functioning driveway, but then this happened. There's this one person who acts like a Karen, so we all call her that. Karen decided that if your car is even slightly hanging out on the street, then your car is getting towed. Karen got a contract with the towing company, and now we have a tow truck that patrols the streets daily. I personally witnessed a neighbor's work truck parked in front of his own home for less than 5 minutes, and the tow truck was about to hook it up before my neighbor came out and screamed at the driver. His car didn't get towed. On top of that, there have been numerous stories of people parking their car in front of their own homes to unload groceries and almost having their car towed after being inside for less than 2 minutes. If that's not crazy enough, the HOA also said that children should not play in the street. Yep, that makes a lot of sense for a quiet neighborhood full of parents and kids, especially when there are literally no sidewalks anywhere. They also tried to police holiday decorations, saying that they should be put up no earlier than 15 days and taken down no later than 15 days after the holiday is passed. Yep, I think my HOA and Karen are starting to go nuts. Edit. We also have a security guy that drives around all day, and the HOA claimed it was to make it safer. Didn't really prevent any break-ins, and middle schoolers nearby still scrap in the entrance. Security guy breaks up the fights, but they still happen. Knowing security man, though he's definitely would not enforce the kids playing on the street rule. And our next story. I refuse to give my family money for my divorce settlement and car accident. Let me start by saying in the past I've always given what I could to help my family over the years. They've always said it was a loan, but never paid it back. That was okay, because at the time I could afford it and they were family. At the same time, they never do anything to change the situation, and it'd be just a stopgap until the next crisis. I've started to, over the years, feel like an ATM for them. My mother, who has BPD, is one of the biggest ones that do this. The second is an older aunt who allows all her grown children and their children to live with her. She has an excellent job, but is always broke because no one else contributes. 3 years ago, I started divorce proceedings from my ex. We had some joint property that was sold with the profits split 50-50 after the balances owed were paid and any other debt accrued during the marriage, for a grand total of $15,000. Not a lot, but enough for me to start a new life. Last year, I was also in a horrible car accident. I had to go through extensive PT, expensive medical tests, and was also out of work during all this. My family never helped me out financially during any of this. Luckily, I received a VA disability check, so even though I struggled, I at least had a roof over my head. So between the divorce and the car accident, I got about $35,000 after doctor, lawyers, and other fees were paid. Well, when it passed through the grapevine about the amount my mom and aunt started hitting me up about asking if I would give them each in the ballpark of $5,000, well, I finally put my foot down and said, no, that money's for me to start over with. I told my aunt she needed to get her kids to start paying their share, and I was done bailing them all out. I told my mother something similar. Well, now, as you can imagine, I am the ungrateful a-hole. The guilt trips have been so bad, I've had to block most of them. My BF agrees with me and thinks this is for their own good. Edit. I never told them what I was getting. In fact, no one, not even my BF, knows the full amount of what I got. They knew one or the other. I don't know who leaked it. I just know for sure who didn't, and that I think it was a combination of people, because as I said, to no one knew the full total. And our last story. I built a fence on my property and didn't let my neighbor hang things on it or paint it. I bought a house with a big old yard several months ago. It's my very first house and the most expensive thing I've ever owned. Prior to this, I've only ever lived in apartments, and the dynamic between neighbors seems really different. When I moved here, there was a very old, rotten wooden fence on the property separation line between me and my new neighbor's property. I wanted to replace it from the start. However, I decided to focus on the house first. You know, the usual stuff, fixing up what needed fixing upping, painting, flooring, moving in the furniture, and so on before focusing on the yard. Now, the guy who owned my house before was an old man, and because of his age, the yard had not seen much work done for what I assume was several years. So it's been a lot of work fixing up the yard. About a month ago, I finally got some time to replace the fence. I went over to the neighbor's house, talked about replacing the fence, and if he was going to split the cost with me, but he'd have nothing of it. He said the fence was fine, and he has no issue with no fence, so if I want to remove it, I should go ahead, but he was not giving me a dime to replace it. It's worth adding that the previous fence was completely on my property and purchased completely by the previous owner. The neighbor has no claim on it. While I was a bit weirded out by his response, I decided to just finance the fence myself and install it myself, being quite a few bucks and a lot of hard work later. I'm now the proud owner of a nice, tall wooden fence. I need to point out, just to make this clear, I pay for it entirely. I put it up by myself, I removed the old fence on my own, and the fence is entirely on my side of the property line. I came home from work a few days ago to find my fence on the neighbor's side entirely filled with plant pots. The border also filled in with all sorts of plants, and he had painted it. I went over to my neighbor and demanded that he take all of it down, alongside demanding he get his sand grinder and take the paint off my fence as well. After all, you don't want to pay for it. You don't get to paint it or hang crap on it. For that matter, plant stuff in my yard. As I said, the fence is entirely on my property, so the border of his yard where he planted stuff is also mine. He laughed at me and essentially told me to get effed. Well, I went back there, tossed all his crap off my fence, pulled all his plants out and tossed them in his yard, and painted the side towards his fence an obnoxious bright yellow. I've since had him raging at my door. His kids came over to yell at me as they'd worked for hours on it. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.